Finally, angry Afghans have gathered in Charikar, the provincial capital of Parwan, in protest against night raids conducted by U.S. troops. The protests were sparked after U.S. troops stormed the house of a former Afghan commander who had fought, against the Taliban and Soviet forces. They set ablaze an arms depot in his house, causing explosions and panic among locals. Angry residents later took to the streets of Charikar and closed the main road which links the city to Kabul. Nighttime raids have been a bone of contention between Afghanistan and the U.S. over the past decade, with civilians being the main casualties of such attacks. Now, based on a security pact signed between the two sides in 2014, American troops are banned from conducting night raids across Afghanistan. Well, to discuss that further, we're now joined by Faiz Khurshid, Press TV's correspondent, who is joining us live now from the Afghan capital, Kabul. Now, Faiz, I know that nighttime raids have for a very long time been very sensitive among the Afghan people, but now this raid on a home of a former Afghan commander who fought against the Taliban, it's kind of confusing, isn't it? Why exactly was this raid carried out?
Well, the reason for the attack is still not known, but it was a massive protest in Charikar province. A large number of people were on the streets chanting slogans against the U.S. military here in Afghanistan, and some of the protesters also burned the U.S. flag. But the protesters went back to their homes after the government promised to fully investigate the attack. The CEO of the Afghan government, Mr. Abdullah, promised that he is going to talk with the U.S. top military commander in Afghanistan, and now the attack is under investigation. We understand it was a nighttime raid carried out by American forces, and the attack caused panic among the residents of Charikar because the former Afghan commander owned a depot of ammunition inside his home, and it caught fire. Early in the morning, people came to the streets and were chanting slogans against the U.S. They were very angry protesters, and they also blocked Kabul-Parwan highway for hours. We understand that this latest U.S. nighttime raid would anger Afghan officials as well, because according to the bilateral security agreement signed between Kabul and Washington, American forces that are stationed in Afghanistan are not allowed to carry out such nighttime raids. They are here only to advise Afghan security forces how to fight against the Taliban insurgents.
Right, so then within this bilateral security agreement that you mentioned, Faiz, as you said, nighttime raids are not allowed to be carried out by U.S. forces. So then what kind of measures can the Afghan government really take against the U.S.?
I think if such nighttime raids continue by American forces on the ground, it will put the bilateral security agreement at risk. Many here believe that the Afghan government would take a stronger stance against this BSA if U.S. forces do not stop such attacks, particularly when it comes to top Afghan military commanders. What happened in Charikar is not acceptable to the Afghan officials and also to local people. It has been reported by top Afghan officials.
Okay, Faiz, as always, thanks very much for that.